Economists believe in the rationality and efficiency of spontaneous decisions of free individuals rather than in the wisdom of governments and their scientific advisors. They do not deny the occurrence of market failures, but their science and their reading of history enables them to argue that government failures are much bigger and much more dangerous. They consider the global warming doctrine a case of a grandiose government failure which undermines markets, human freedom and prosperity. Second, the economists, at least since Frederick Bastiat, consider it their duty to warn policymakers against the unintended consequences of their actions and against not differentiating between what is seen and what is not seen. Third, the economists know something about scarcity and about the importance of prices and warn against any attempts to play with them. They believe in the cost-benefit analysis and in the rational risk aversion, not in the precautionary principle. And they have also a rather developed sub-discipline called energy economics, which should not be disregarded, forgotten suddenly. Number 4, the economists are aware of externalities because they themselves formulated this concept. They understand it's, by the way, when I was this morning at King's College, they showed me the paintings of Professor Pigou, who was teaching here, and he was one of the forerunners of that concept. The economists understand its enormous complexity and consider it dangerous in unqualified hands. After decades of studies, they do not a prioristically see the world as full of negative externalities. Number 5, the economists base their thinking about intertemporal events on a rather sophisticated concept of discounting, which I will touch later. And finally, the economists have some experience with the analysis of time series. Statistics and econometrics used in economic analysis is full of sophisticated models, not used in natural sciences, because these are based mostly on the analysis of cross-section data samples. They know something about problems with the imperfect quality of data, about measurement errors, about data mining, about precariousness of all kinds of averages and other statistical characteristics. They also have some experience with computer modeling in complex systems, with pseudo-correlations, with the sensitivity of parameter adjustment, etc., etc. So I fully disagree with Professor Mitchell that the economists are innocent in their models and mathematics and statistics. It may be just the opposite. For me, the models used in climatology and in this debate are usually the models not made by scientists but by computer experts, by systems engineers, and so I consider them much inferior as compared to the econometric and economic modeling. So for that reason, I think that the economists have the right to comment on the statistical analysis of climatologists, and on all the time series we were looking at the whole day. After this brief outline of the economic way of thinking, let me make three hopefully explanatory comments. First, the economists do not believe in the precautionary principle and do not see the outcome of the cost-benefit comparisons of CO2 emission reductions as favorably as the adherents of the global warming doctrine. They know that energy demand and supply patterns change only slowly and see the very high degree of stability in the relationship between man-made carbon dioxide emissions, economic activity, and the emissions intensity. They don't expect a radical shift in this relationship. The emissions intensity as a macro phenomenon moves only very slowly and doesn't make miracles. They are therefore convinced that the very robust relationship between CO2 emissions and the rate of economic growth is here and is here to stay. If someone wants to reduce CO2 emissions, he must either expect a revolution in economic efficiency or must start organizing a worldwide economic decline. Revolutions in economic efficiency, at least in relevant and meaningful time horizons, were never realized in the past and will not happen in the future either. It was the recent financial and economic crisis, not a technological miracle, nor preachings by Mr. Pachauri, what brought about a slight reduction of CO2 emissions. The adherents of the global warming doctrine should explain to the people worldwide that they consider the economic decline inevitable and desirable. Second, the relationships studied in natural sciences are not influenced by any rational or irrational behavior, by subjective valuations of the variables in question, nor by the fact that people make choices. In social or behavior sciences, it is more difficult. To make a rational choice means to pay attention to intertemporal relations and to look at the opportunity costs. It is evident that by assuming a very low, close to zero discount rate, the proponents of the global warming doctrine neglect the issue of time and of alternative opportunities. Using a low discount rate in global warming models means harming the current generations vis-à-vis the future generations, and undermining of current economic development means harming the future generations as well. Economists representing very different schools of thoughts, from William Nordhaus from Yale to Ken Murphy from Chicago, tell us convincingly that the discount rate indispensable for any intertemporal calculations should be around the market rate, around 5%, and that it should be close to the real rate of return on capital, because only such a rate is the opportunity costs of climate mitigation. We should never accept claims that by using a low discount rate we protect the interests of future generations, and that the opportunity costs are irrelevant because in the case of global warming the problem of choice doesn't exist. This is a quotation. This uneconomic, or better to say anti-economic way of thinking must not be accepted. And the final point, as someone who personally experienced central planning and attempts to organize the whole society from above. And I spent most of my life in communism. And when there was a discussion this morning about the regime shift, we experienced a regime shift. You know, I am not sure about 1997 was the real regime shift. 1989 was the real regime shift. So as someone who personally experienced such a society, I feel obliged to warn against the arguments and ambitions which are very similar to those we had to live with decades ago. The arrogance with which the alarmists of the global warming doctrine and their fellow travelers in politics and media want to suppress the market, control the society, dictate the prices directly or indirectly by means of various interventions, including taxes, is something I know well from the past. All the old, already almost forgotten economic arguments against communism should be repeated now. It is our duty to do so. To conclude, I would like to say that I agree with many serious climatologists or people from natural sciences who say that the warming we experience is or is on the horizon will be very small. Convincing arguments can be found in the Jan Bleimer's recent book. Is he here now or not? I'm afraid that he didn't sell the arguments from the book this afternoon. The book is much stronger. I agree with many other climatologists who say that it's difficult to prove that the human effect on the climate can be measured because this effect is lost in the variability of natural climate changes. And from the economic point of view, in case there will be no irrational interventions against it, the economic losses connected with such a modest warming will be very small. A loss generated as a result of a completely useless fight against global warming would be far greater. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your attention.